This is the original text from English File Intermediate. The original version was File 8A, was one of the very best files in English File Intermediate. I think Vicki probably listened to this a few times, perhaps saw it written down as well, and then after she'd made some notes, she retold the story, and that's what you'll see next.
That story talks about a Spanish couple that travel in Titanic. They were Josefa and Victor. Victor was 24 years old, and Josefa was 22. They had got married. They were from a rich family in Spain, so they wanted to had to travel around New York. To do a travel. Well, or trip. Okay.
It is something that is wrong. Travel is a problem.
No.
Travel.
No, travel. Travel. Trip.
Close.
Okay. A trip around New York on his honeymoon. So they got in Titanic when stopped in France, but Victor's mother didn't want to travel in Titanic because she had a dream. She had a dream where Titanic sank. And for that reason, Victor left a servant in Paris and gave to his servant a lot of postcards that they had written, and the servant had to send one postcard every day to his mother.
It's another story.
Okay, so when the Titanic sank, Josefa was in bed and Victor was preparing to go to bed. Victor went up to see what had happened. When he came back, told to Josefa to get dressed. Both went to the deck, and Josefa got into a lifeboat. And Josefa arrived safely in New York. Oh, sorry, I forgot something. When the Titanic sank, Josefa shouted the Victor's name, but they also only can hear terrible cryings and shoutings of people that they are drowning. They were drowning. Josefa arrived safely in New York. Victor's mother couldn't believe that his son was dead, because she thinks that he was in Paris and he had a postcard that day. But well, Josefa got married 6 years later again and have 3 children. And well, she died in 1972 at age 83. And that.
Josefa and Victor, a young couple from a wealthy Spanish family, were filled with joy. They had just married and were embarking on their grand honeymoon. Their destination was New York, and their vessel was the magnificent Titanic, the largest ship ever built. Before they left, Victor's mother had a strange feeling. "Be careful, my son," she had warned, her eyes full of worry. "I have a bad feeling about this ship." To ease her mind, Victor arranged for a servant in Paris to send her a postcard every day, making her believe he was still there. The first few days on the Titanic were wonderful. Josefa and Victor enjoyed delicious meals, danced in the grand ballroom, and strolled along the vast decks. The ship felt like a floating palace, and their love story was just beginning. One cold night, Josefa was already asleep in their luxurious cabin. Victor was still awake, perhaps reading or looking out at the dark ocean. Suddenly, there was a jolt, a strange vibration that ran through the entire ship. Victor, startled by the unusual movement, decided to investigate. He quickly put on a robe and stepped out into the corridor, curious about what had caused the disturbance. The ship was quiet, but he could feel a subtle change in its movement. A few minutes later, Victor rushed back into the cabin, his face pale. "Josefa, wake up," he urged, his voice urgent. "Something is wrong. We need to get dressed quickly and go to the deck." They hurried through the ship's corridors, which were now filling with confused and anxious passengers. On the deck, the scene was chaotic. People were rushing, and the crew was directing them towards the lifeboats. The ship was tilting noticeably. Victor helped Josefa into one of the last lifeboats. "I'll be right behind you," he promised, his eyes full of love. The lifeboat was lowered slowly into the icy water, carrying Josefa away from the sinking ship. From the lifeboat, Josefa watched in horror as the Titanic began its final descent. She screamed Victor's name, her voice lost in the terrible sounds of the ship breaking apart. All she could hear were the desperate cries of people in the water. Josefa arrived safely in New York, a survivor, but her heart was broken. Meanwhile, Victor's mother continued to receive postcards, believing her son was still safe in Paris, unaware of the tragedy. 6 years later, Josefa found love again and remarried. She built a new life, filled with the laughter of her 3 children. She always remembered Victor, but she chose to live fully. Josefa lived a long life, full of both sorrow and joy. She passed away peacefully in 1972 at the age of 83, carrying the memories of a grand ship and a lost love, but also of a life well lived.
Vicki made her recording more than 10 years ago. She was an excellent B1 student, and I felt that the storybook, which was pitched at B2, and that was confirmed by Pearson's text analyzer and text inspector, I think if she could have produced that based on her transcript, she would have been delighted. It would have been a quite remarkable thing. Maybe the novelty would wear off, but I think the excitement of that initially would be a real motivating factor. Eventually, I suppose it might just become something routine, but even then, I think it could be useful.